Hi there, welcome back to the Rusty Lathe project. As you can see, I'm midway through everything being stripped down, and one or two tools that I've been using to clean it up. I've been cleaning it with paraffin, and the paraffin has been poured into a jar, and then I've just been using a brush to stipple the paraffin on, etc., to swill it off and wash it off. And then I've been cleaning the paraffin away with no more than one of these paper rags, just a disposable paper rag thing. And then once I've got the muck off it, etc., I have been using this rust dissolver again to try and remove some of the rust. Now there's got to be a bit of a word of caution with this, because it's a strange article in that it says to use water to wash it off with. So you apply it with a brush in a thick gel, as we have been doing, and then you swill it off with water. I didn't necessarily want to use water on the lathe, so I was using WD-40, and I found the WD-40 to work quite well. It did seem to remove it, but the following day when you came in, the lathe would have a slight air of rust around it, you know, just slightly on it, and so that obviously didn't clear it off perhaps quite as well as it should have. So I thought I'd use water. So on the bits that I could kind of take outside and use water on, which is this cross slide here, I cleaned it off again with the rust dissolver, using one of these cloths to rub the rust off, because it was only a light covering in the first instance. And then you take this outside, you wash off the solution and dry it off with a cloth to get rid of the water, etc., because we don't want it to rust. So then you come back in the garage and you do a little bit on the lathe, and then you go back inside to where you've left this nicely dried off with a cloth, and you find it with a quite well established covering of brown, almost as if it's rust again. So it really is a strange thing. So as soon as you've used that and cleaned it off with water, then is the time to get some oil on it, in my opinion, quite quickly. If you were using this stuff for a car, which is what it's supposed to be used for, I think you'd have to be fairly sharpish at getting some kind of primers on there or something like that. Or certainly that's been my experience. I might be doing it wrong, but who knows. But that's what I've been finding with it. You've got to be very careful. I'll just show you now, because this is the kind of not sure if you can see it just there. We'll have a look with the camera, but there, that kind of rust. It's just a light dusting of rust, and you think, wow, I didn't expect it to be rusty. I thought it was going to be bright, shiny, clean, which when you've used the water, it does leave it exceptionally clean. It certainly removes the rust, etc., given a few applications if needed. But it does work, it gets rid of the rust, but then you're left with a slight covering of rust in only a few minutes. So that's why we can see now everything that I've cleaned is oiled up, because otherwise it would probably go to rust again. So that's what we're up against. But anyway, I'll bring you over and we'll have a closer look at what I'm doing here and some bits and pieces about these pieces that are on here. But basically, this rack here, the screwed threaded rod here for screw cutting, etc., I've been cleaning that down with this wire brush, this brass wire brush that I purchased, cleaning it down like that and rotating it and cleaning it and rotating it, and then just with the paraffin on it, paraffin out of the jar, and then the toothbrush, etc., etc., and and then once it's all cleaned off, the paraffin evaporates away, and then I've been putting some oil on it, which is this oil here, which is from Miller's lathe oil. It's 7AW, and I'm in the process of trying to find out from Miller's Oils what exactly this is, as to whether it's any good for the slideways on here, or I will look into some others which some people which have commented in have given me leads to. So that's great, thank you for those comments. So I may well be chasing them up, them comments, look into that. So let's come across and have a look at some bits and pieces that we've found. One person commented that the little oil points that we were looking at previously and discussing, said that perhaps I should blow them out with a compressor, because grease may have been used in the past by somebody who mistakenly put grease in there as opposed to the proper lubrication oil, which can happen, I suppose. This machine was owned prior to me by a qualified engineer, so I don't suppose that has happened, but the oil holes could still get blocked up, and one of them did get blocked up, which we'll have a look at shortly. But I do have a compressor, but I thought I would try the old foot pump. Not that I'm Scottish or anything like that, but you could use it like a bagpipe. It's just a little bit less vigorous than my compressor and my air gun should anything blow around, and you would do this with the eye goggles on, which are here. But basically I'll just show you on this one. On this one here, you would put your oil can onto the ball, and you would press the ball down, and then you would use the oil can to squirt oil in where the ball was, and it would come through a drilled hole in here and lubricate this area in there. And the suggestion was to blow through all of these little oil holes wherever they might be on the lathe, just to make sure that there's nothing actually clogging them up. So what I've done, you might just see it in there. I'll perhaps bring you in closer and have a close-up at this, but this is the way I'm doing it, just like that. So this has a good advantage, that it comes with various bits, so you could use various adapters to fit the size of job that you've actually got in hand. And this one did actually come in handy, and I'll show you that very shortly. But I just push that down onto the ball, and you might just see the oil being squeezed out of the bottom down here as the wind from this pump blows and presses down on that. So that proves that this particular one is clear of any obstruction and grease inside. So I'll bring you a little bit nearer, and we'll have a look at this arrangement, and one of these little oil holes that was clogged, and which this fitting came in handy to sort out. So I'll bring you over for a closer look. So here we are again then, looking at this little arrangement here, and if I press the ball in, you can see the ball depressing maybe, and I'll put the pump onto there, press the ball down, and there we are. You can see the air is moving the oil down in the bottom. Obviously with a proper compressor on there, it would be so much more effective. And if of course if the oil hole wasn't clear, then I would have to use the compressor. And again, on this cross slide arrangement here, there's one in the middle of there, you can probably hear, I can hear the air coming out of the bottom somewhere. So that appears to be clear as well. And again, I'll check that again off camera, but I'm just showing you what's happening there. So I'll move this piece out of the way before it falls over. But as we can see, it's reasonably clean of rust now, and it's oiled up ready. Now there's a number on here. If we put it the right way up, you should be able to see the number on there, perhaps 1009, and that corresponds with a number on the back of here as well, 1009. So this was machined to fit this in particular, and the two were mated up and were given the same number so that they couldn't be mixed up with any others in the workshops where the lathe was assembled, I'm assuming. But again, there are the oil holes, which I'll blow through off camera. These oil holes that we're looking at, when you depress the ball and put the oil in there, the oil comes down and through here and along these little grooves that we spoke about previously to spread the oil over the whole of the slideway when it's riding backwards and forwards. But also it's cross drilled, not sure if you can see it, into this part here. I don't think you can see it, to be honest, but there's a hole through there that feeds into this gib strip, well, into this gib here to lubricate the gib as well. And on this side here we've got the gib strip, so there's an oil arrangement through the gib strip itself. We'll have a look at that. But as that's grooved there, this is also grooved on the inside of here to spread the oil around. This is the gib strip that fastens into this side, either that way up or the other way up, whichever way it goes with the, and then that slides on there, and it's held in place as the screws push against these two locating areas here that tension the gib strip up against there, such that when it's tensioned up it can't wobble about like that, and the whole of the top won't be wobbling. So that's what that's all about. I'm just interested in showing you the oil ways, really, if you didn't know they existed. I didn't know they existed, so it's news to me. But I just wanted to show you this because, as I said, somebody had commented about blowing these out with an airline, which is a very good comment, because this one also, that's the bolt arrangement that dropped down, if you recall. It dropped into the bottom of there and I couldn't get the slide off because it was sat in there, so I had to put that piece of tube through, if you remember, and lift that up effectively so that then it could go out like that. So that's what was happening there. And if I just bring in for a moment, I'll just bring back the slide here, and if we look at this one in the top of there, the oiling point, that comes through down this hole in the middle, and that hole is the one that holds that in place, if you recall. So once we've established that fact, we know that oil is going to come down this hole from above. It's going to feed down the middle of here, but I'm not sure if you can see that. Let's hope we can. I'll come round and have a look. If you see from at the top there, you can see some rubbish dangling down. Now when I tried to blow down this down here with the airline, I couldn't blow down, it wouldn't do it. So I had to use this tool arrangement on the end of the foot pump, and I simply pushed that down inside there, and you can see the rubbish that this long pole actually pushed out. You can see the pole there, it's just pushing it out, and then it blew clear. So let's have a look. So now we can see all of that rubbish that's inside that hole there was actually in this tube, blocking the oil getting down into the thread to lubricate this hand wheel. So as this was moving backwards and forwards, the threads weren't getting lubricated because the lubrication was blocked up. So maybe that's a bit of an ongoing maintenance issue that people should perhaps think about looking into on their lathe if they've got one of these, or a similar type of carry-on whatever lathe they've got. But that was certainly blocked up. So that's going to be cleared, and that's where the different adapters come in for different jobs. You can also push the ball down there and be blown, but you wouldn't get much air going down because you've no real seal around it now. The other plastic component that I had on earlier had a better seal around that hole to blow air down. So we'll just go handheld now, and we'll have a look round some other things on the lathe that I could do with some advice on. If anybody knows anything about it, please. So one of the queries I have with regard to the lathe is this oil viewing hole here. I don't think that I can see the oil in there, but I'm not sure whether this plate here is to put the oil in. I think it's round the back from what I understand, but I haven't got any instructions for this lathe. So if anybody could tell me whether I ever need to remove this piece here and what I would find behind there and why I would need to get in there, that would be great. So that's point one. Point two, is this the oil position there on the back plate? Would I need to remove all of these screws here and remove the back plate, or would I just simply unscrew this with a large flat bladed driver or something and pop oil inside there? And then I suppose I would look on this gauge here and hopefully see the oil probably halfway across. Would you think it should go halfway across if anybody's got instructions for these lathes? So that's point number two. And then point number three, does anybody know where I can get a new motor terminal cover from? If we look at the motor terminal cover, it's not there anymore. It was there when I got the lathe, but it's not there anymore. And I'll show you why. It's actually here. But as we can see, it's literally just crumbling away. So when I tried to clean the motor off, it just broke away, it just crumbled away. So if anybody has an outlet where I can get one of those from, if anybody knows a manufacturer that would fit on this exact same motor, if anybody's still manufacturing them, I can get one of those ordered up. And another thing I wanted to show you was the equipment there. The slight rusting on it. Now I don't recall that rusting being on things prior to starting to clean this lathe up. So again, maybe it's something to do with this stuff being left open to the atmosphere whilst I've been working on the lathe, because as I say, I've left it on without covering it up with the plastic, which it says to do on the instructions. So maybe that's had some effect. But if we were to look at a previous clip, we would have seen that both of these two chucks had rust on them. So they've come up lovely and clean again now. I'm not quite sure whether I will need to disassemble the chuck, but I've put some oil on it for now to protect it from this rusting that I have in the workshop, so that's okay for that. So if we recall previously, when we were looking at this hand wheel arrangement in there, through it goes, we can see that on there is a dimple, and that dimple registers inside this slot here against that screw to stop the bearing turning. So that screw mates up with that inside here to stop this bearing turning. And in the top here is the oil hole, which will correspond with this oil hole. So this is the oiling point for this bearing here. Now if we recall, when I got this lathe, this bearing had slipped and locked because the top slide wasn't going backwards and forwards as it should do. So that bearing I found when I took it out of here was absolutely seized solid. I could not get it to move, and it still seizes now. It will turn, and then for some unknown reason it will just lock up again. It's just got a little bit tight there, spinning, and then sometimes it will get to the point it did the other day where I just couldn't turn it at all. So again, I had to put the whole thing, it's locked again now, it's quite stiff now, it's gone again, it's loose, and now it's locked up again. It's not turning with my finger because it's locked up. It's even stiff now, but there it's loose again. So it keeps locking up for some strange reason. But there's plenty of oil in there now, and it's very free at times, and then it just seemed to lock up. But the way I had to free that off was to put this whole thing back inside its housing like that, tighten the grub screw up, and then literally force this hand wheel round to get it to turn. It really was tight. I really had to force it round, and I was half expecting that something might have broken. I thought maybe the end of this screw might have broken off inside this housing, or it might have ripped the little dimple in there. Thought it might have done more damage to that, but it didn't. It did actually go free, and it had a tight spot, slack spot, tight spot, slack spot, and such, and so it was just a case of winding it round and round and round and round and round until it became slack. And then I oiled it up, and it seemed to be working fine. If you recall, we also had a look at this scale arrangement here. We can see a 10 and a 0 on it, and we might be able to work out some little markings on it. But in any event, one of the viewers has kindly offered me I think a new bearing for here, and this new dial, which is as we can see, it's so rusted that I don't think I'll ever be able to see the digits again really. We can just make them out on the very edge of there, but it's so rusted and they're so faint that it's no good really. So if that person could get back in touch with me, and if they do have this piece and that bearing, that would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for writing in on the comments and offering that. That's brilliant. So yeah, I'd like to hear from you again if I could, and hopefully get that lot sorted out. Down here we can see that I've now put in a scratch mark here. It does come right to the very end, and that scratch mark then will hopefully aid me in reading this scale here to see where we're at. But I will probably end up using DTIs as well, dial test indicators, to tell us how far we've moved with things. But there we are. Just sort of give you a quick overview as to where we are at the moment, and as soon as I sort out my way oil, I'll get this stuff put back together. So if the kind offer of these components here is still on the go, then yeah, that's brilliant. I would accept that. Thank you very much indeed. Another point in question would be this arrangement here for the milling head. Some of the other lathes have got a hand wheel in here, such that the whole of this can rise into the air to give you a bigger scope above your work table area. And I was just wondering whether A, how easy this thing was to lift off there, whether it just lifted straight off, and B, if I could get hold of one of these winding bits that go in there, whether anybody still manufactures them, etc., such that I can make this into one that does actually rise higher up. That's just food for thought. So yeah, if anybody could suggest a supplier of those, or whether it was possible, that would be great. And one final thing, as we can see, I've cleaned this off, but it's still quite rusty. And does anybody know where I can get the correct shade of paint? Does anybody know what shade of paint that is? I do have some light blue Hammerite, which I could paint it light blue Hammerite, or just leave it as it is and oil it up to prevent any further rust going on it. But ideally, if I could get the correct shade of touch-up paint, that'd be fantastic again. So okay, there we are. Thanks for watching everybody. Bye for now.